Hello, in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about how to write your academic paper in your own voice. Now, this is a slightly more advanced technique for academic writing. It will definitely be crucial and applicable to postgraduate students. If you're an undergraduate student, you might like to listen anyways because I'm sure you would impress your lecturers if you follow some of these tips. So in this video, I want to talk to you about how to find your voice and utilize it in your academic work. Now, what do I mean by your voice? Now, if you are doing postgraduate study, then I presume that for most of you, you're doing this particular degree because you have enthusiasm or passion for the particular subject that you are studying. You may have a particular theory or topic within your subject that has inspired you to begin this journey, or you may be already thinking about certain applications that this research might have in the real world. At any rate, finding your voice is really about drawing upon that initial enthusiasm and thinking about what is really your intention and your motivation for engaging in this research. Now, some of you may have watched my introductory video on the Peel method, which tells you how to structure paragraphs according to the acronym Peel, for your point sentence, your evidence sentence, evaluation sentence, and linking sentence. And I mentioned the importance of bringing in evidence from other researchers and putting forth your own assertions or your own arguments and making it your own. And really, that's the mainstay of what I'm going to be talking about today, but on a more advanced level. Now, the reason I'm talking about this specifically, especially for postgraduate students, is because there is a tendency, as you move up the academic ladder, so to speak, to start trying to be more academic, and sometimes that pressure to be more academic can start to supplant your own voice. And when you start to supplant your own voice, you're either A, going to be derivative, or B, not really going to say anything at all due to the fear of being disagreed with. Now, if you are concerned about safeguarding your work from criticism, please do see the guide that I have created on this topic on my website, as there are certain techniques that you can employ to safeguard your work. However, you can also safeguard your work by developing the confidence to use your own voice. So here are my top 3 tips for confidently using your own voice in your academic research. So tip number 1, be intentional. And I already kind of alluded to this in the beginning of my video. This is about going back to that enthusiasm, your passion, and thinking intentionally about what you want to accomplish and what drew you to this topic in the first place. Indeed, this is so important for postgraduate work because what you are producing is not only going to be filling a gap because you found something that somebody hasn't researched before to a sufficient level, but it's also filling a gap because you're offering your own unique perspective, and that's not something that you want to lose in the course of research. And of course, I'm not saying that you should bring in all of your own bias and opinions and litter your work with that, because that would indeed render it quite non-academic. But instead, I'm saying consider the reasons and the motivation that led you through life to be interested in this research project that you're doing right now, because your background, your worldview, your various experiences are going to affect how you are approaching this research. And of course, as a good academic, it's important to be aware of how this is affecting your research, but then at the same time, this is also bringing something of unique value to your research. So please do constantly remind yourself of what enthused you about this project in the first place and how you can bring this enthusiasm to life in an academically rigorous way in your project. Tip number 2, be diligent. Some students get quite bogged down with the need to sound academic and to employ the use of some of the academic jargon that's found in their discipline to the point that they begin to lose their own voice. So I'm going to borrow a great phrase that I read by Louise Katz, who specializes in academic writing. She said, "Don't try to sound academic, instead be academic." So what does this mean? Well, it means be a good researcher. Be diligent in your research. When you're making an argument in your academic writing, think about other arguments that people have made before you. Think about the ones which would more or less support the direction in which you're moving. Also think about the ones which are in contradistinction to the argument you're trying to make. And this is also a really great way to safeguard your research from criticism, because if you start thinking from an outside or external perspective of how others who even disagree with you might read your argument, then you can begin thinking about how you're going to justify the arguments you're making. And the key to that really is to know your argument inside and out and know the research inside and out. And on a related note, my final tip number 3, be critical. Now, at an undergraduate level, you are probably told to employ critical thinking skills, so this may be somewhat familiar to you. So this has to do with making evaluations, analyzing, making value judgments, comparing and contrasting. That's really at base level what being critical is all about. But at postgraduate level, this takes on a higher level. So you're not just critically thinking or critically analyzing what is seen, but also what is unseen. Don't just think about the actual arguments at face value, think about the underlying structures, the underlying frameworks which are underpinning those arguments. Don't just think about what someone has said, but how their worldview, how their background, and how the framework that they are using might influence their assertions. And as mentioned in tip number 2, interrogate your own arguments with those same lenses. Consider what are the weak points in your arguments, and how would you address them if challenged? What might be some of the weak points in some of the structures or the worldviews from which you are operating? So those are my top 3 tips for how to find your own voice, utilize it, but still be academically rigorous in what you're producing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you found it helpful, please do subscribe to this channel so you can be kept apprised of more research tips. If you have any questions or comments, please do leave them below the description. Thank you.